This lecture accompanies Chapter 14, Addiction and Families. I find this to be a fascinating chapter and just a fascinating point of discussion when it comes to addictive use disorders. It is not uncommon to know of or have someone in your either immediate family or distant family or choice family who struggles with an addictive use disorder. And I sort of challenge all of you guys to think, just kind of take a moment and think, if you happen to have someone with an addictive use disorder at varying levels and stages in your family. And more oftentimes than not, the answer is yes. Again, whether it's immediate family or somewhat distant family or friend, we are all sort of affected by addictive use disorders and addiction in general. And you can see here the data is pretty alarming. And when you consider how devastating these long-term effects of addiction can be on the family, it's pretty startling that traditional treatment approaches oftentimes don't have the time or the resources to include the family in a way that could be both meaningful and productive for everyone involved. And that's sort of something that as a society we're not doing very well. And hopefully, with the evolution of addiction and addiction treatment, I am optimistic and hopeful that the efforts that we are taking currently are addressing this gap. So as you can see, there's a long-term and devastating effect on the family when it comes to those with addiction. An individual, even if it's just one, oftentimes there's more, but an individual with an addictive use disorder disrupts healthy family dynamics and increases the likelihood that multiple family members may suffer some harm, be it physical or psychological harm. And that's not even considering the physical and psychological harm of the individual with an addictive use disorder. You can see here that there's some substantial gaps in research. Like a lot of things in our field, the majority of the research is done on, and assessments are normed for Caucasian heterosexual and sort of intact families as defined by a female wife, a wife, a husband, and 2.5 kids and the dog. And we all know that is not a clear or accurate presentation of a family. Primarily focuses on alcoholism, and it looks mostly at male individuals with an addictive use disorder and only one. And does not typically consider that concept of comorbidity or the idea that an individual has multiple mental health issues occurring simultaneously. So an addictive use disorder and let's say depression or bipolar or the list goes on and on and on. You can see here, though, that family members can be incredibly impactful. And again, when I say family members, I'm not just talking about biological related by blood family members. This can include chosen family members. So if an individual chooses others to be a part of their family, we need to include that into our conversation, discussion, and concept of our client's family as well. So they can be instrumental in motivation. Again, we know that intrinsic motivation is the greater determining factor for sustained sobriety in an individual with an addictive use disorder. However, external motivating factors like family members and friends can certainly be impactful and helpful in terms of getting an individual the treatment that they need, getting them into treatment, helping them stay in treatment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll talk about family rules, the sort of meets the needs of everyone, these boundaries, and being flexible. We'll talk about that briefly. There's a couple. This is a pretty big chapter with a lot of really important information in it, so I may gloss over some of these for the lecture, but make sure that you're reading up on these and you have a clear understanding of family rules and what healthy family rules look like. Okay, so when we look at families, and any of you who are interested in systems, we have to consider the idea of homeostasis. And uh, what homeostasis is, sorry, I said that kind of quickly, is essentially balance. And what we all as human beings strive for and look forward to, or try to achieve rather, is balance. And that balance doesn't necessarily always have to be healthy. We may choose to stay with unhealthy behaviors as long as it doesn't disrupt the system. So again, the homeostasis doesn't necessarily have to be healthy. There can be dysfunctional homeostasis, dysfunctional balance in a family, and the family together collectively could sort of not necessarily want to change because of this innate desire to hold on to balance. So again, homeostasis is the tendency for a system to balance in response to change. One thing that's important to know is that when anything moves or changes in a family dynamic, relationships become strained. It's impossible for everyone without a lot of work to sort of move together, especially if it's not healthy, if the dynamic isn't healthy. As you can see here, within unhealthy, addicted family dynamics, there's frequent denial, and then this, like I was referencing, the attempt to maintain that balance, even if it's unhealthy, in the system. Your assignment asks you to look at two videos, or it's one video, but it follows two individuals and their families, Terry and Leon. And what I want you to focus on is that dysfunctional homeostasis. How is the individual with addictive use disorder and the family members attempting to hold on to or maintain this dysfunctional homeostasis? I want you to look at their familial roles, familial rules. Again, not all of these are healthy, and we want to sometimes hang on to unhealthy ones. Boundary violations. We're going to talk about boundaries here in a minute because boundaries are crucial component when working with addictive use disorders. The expectations. What are familial expectations? And do these familial expectations align with your client's expectations, wants, desires? And then issues of codependency and enabling. And so we've all heard about the concept of enmeshment, enabling, or codependency when it comes to addictive use disorders. Again, how does that tie into maintaining that unhealthy homeostasis, that unhealthy relationship, that dysfunction that exists in a family that ultimately prevents or prohibits an individual who has an addictive use disorder from sobriety? And then in situations where it is healthy, how has this change in all of these aspects, how has this change helped to support the individual with an addictive use disorder? So let's jump to boundaries. Uh-oh, did I pass it? Oh no, I went the wrong way. Oh shoot. Okay, here's just a little bit of it. So boundaries govern the rules surrounding how close people can get to each other and how family connects with the larger society, and finally, how conflict is tolerated. So these are our sort of invisible lines, if you will, around us, and then, of course, by extension, around our family, that are imposed by us, and then, of course, by extension, by our family, that govern how we engage, govern how we interact. And when you have a addicted family dynamic, boundaries can oftentimes result in that addiction or that addicted family member to sort of be in secret. Boundaries may result in the family or the individual being sort of isolated, so hiding the individual with an addictive use disorder and hiding the fact that the family has someone with an addictive use disorder. But what we do know is that these unhealthy boundaries result in emotional intimacy, low emotional intimacy. And what that means is that there's sort of not this the work of the family and the efforts and the energy of the family is around maintaining these unhealthy boundaries and not on developing relationships and healthy sort of emotional connections within the family. Addicted family systems tend to have rigid, disengaged boundaries, which can result in poor communication, high levels of negativity and conflict, inadequate problem solving, low cohesion, that's that connection, and lack of organization and consistency. Think about just the concept of boundaries in your own family, whether they are positive in some aspects or negative in other aspects, and then now apply this to a family that may have one or multiple members with an addictive use disorder. Then you can kind of get an idea of how this need to maintain these unhealthy boundaries becomes ever more important. And then, of course, how that can be really negative in terms of supporting someone with an addictive use disorder. What we know about addiction in the family is that when individuals do try to become sober in whatever way they define, or to engage in recovery and healthy behaviors, that family does have to collectively agree to move forward in a healthy way together, or a couple of things can happen. The individual with an addictive use disorder moves on without the unhealthy family dynamics and unhealthy family members. Or the individual with an addictive use disorder backslides, and now we have relapse and lapses and just a sort of re-engagement of those unhealthy behaviors. Again, the most positive outcome would be all of the family members working and progressing together. So I want to make sure I go through here. Look at the 4 roles that sort of people and children and individuals can occupy in a family dynamic that it has an addicted individual or someone with an addictive use disorders. Look up on these and read up on these and think about times where in the videos that you're going to watch where some of these roles may be prevalent. Again, so there's roles and there's rules, and the roles are: what is your place, what is your responsibility, what role do you play in that family, and is it healthy? The rules, of course, in healthy family system, rules are flexible. They are not inflexible. They are flexible. And so they are ever changing to meet the needs of the healthy family dynamic. When they don't change, when they are inconsistent, or when they sort of lack consistent consequences, then we're back in that idea of unhealthy rules, unhealthy engagement. Rules can be overt and covert. So an overt rule would be, I want you home by 10 o'clock. And if you're not home by 10 o'clock, there is a consequence that is associated, and that consequence is clear and reasonable and consistent with sort of the infraction. Some covert rules are those unspoken rules that govern interpersonal behavior. So that may be the way you communicate. That may be it is implied, it is known that these are rules that you follow, and again, there may be some consequences associated with it. And those healthy family rules are present. They are here and now. They are logical. They are consistent, and they are designed to promote growth, not designed to be preventative or punitive just because. I'm going to stop the video right here, and I'm going to pick up with another one since this is kind of a long chapter.